Hi guys, Luetin here, and today I'm joined by Westie. Hi Westie, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
I'm very well. So me and Westie today are going to be speaking about Armour 3. No, we're talking about Battlefield. Battlefield 1. We're talking about Battlefield 1 because obviously it's coming, it's getting closer, it's getting closer. And for those of you who are obviously here on my channel because of all the Armour stuff, you guys will know historically I'm a massive Battlefield player. But I have taken a big break from Battlefield recently, and it's because towards the end of Battlefield 4, I was starting to get a little disillusioned with the style of play, and also the game had just been out for a while, and after a while, you do just get tired of certain games, you move on, then you come back again. It's always very cyclical. But I wanted to give Battlefield 1 the best chance I can, see how it plays out. Obviously, Hardline as well had a load of issues there, and, we've talked about that in the past. But Battlefield 1, I want to give it a fair crack. I want to see where we are with it. There's some things I like, some things I don't like. But I also want to say, Westie and me, people probably know me and Westie have, historically had not always, shared the same views. We've often had conflicting views about things. Westie's liked some things that I haven't liked, and probably vice versa. But the reason I wanted to speak with Westie today is, I could have very easily spoken to other producers that I know who probably share the same opinions as me more, but that's not always the best thing for a discussion. When you have a discussion, you want to be able to have a constructive argument both ways. That's good because it makes you think more about your own perspective. It makes you question things. It makes you sort of maybe even change your opinion. And the other thing is that, as I've said recently, I really see on YouTube a great amount of unconstructive conversation happening, especially in the comments, often a lot of hostile conversation. And I think it's positive to show people that you can have two people who have very different views, but still hold a constructive conversation. Just because somebody has a different opinion to you doesn't necessarily mean that opinion is wrong. And just because somebody hosts, a very strong opinion about something doesn't mean that you have to be disrespectful to their opinion, doesn't mean that you can't even perhaps see their perspective, despite the fact that maybe you don't agree. So Westie, should we start off with something you want to talk about the game? Something that maybe is important for you, as we are with the beta right now. Everybody's playing the beta. What should we start with?
Well, I think one of the most hot topics, especially in the forums, which is just a quagmire if you decide to wade through it, if we could talk about the Conquest game mode, because I think it's a big talking point, and I don't know whether we agree or not, but I'd like to see what you think about the game mode. Have you played it?
Yeah, I mean, me and my guys with Squad, we've been playing obviously a fair bit this week, and Conquest, overall, I've actually fairly enjoyed it, but one thing I'm not so sure about still is the scoring for the cap points and stuff, and this is something that Level had actually pointed out in one of his videos pretty early on. I was for a long time talking about how we need to focus team play more. Everybody knows this. I've always talked about wanting to focus the objective, focus the team play, and we've had huge discussions in the past about how the hell do you do that? How do you get people that are running around like headless chickens to care about getting onto the objective? And so they've tried to adjust the scoring and the points and all these kind of things. Also kills, don't value so much. But also, obviously, now they've changed it up so that kills are not impacting the tickets, right? And I think that's something that's, being quite contentious to people. But in terms of the overall gameplay and just Conquest and how it feels very Conquest. It feels very Battlefield to me. So from a kind of, I suppose, genre, but is it Battlefield? Does it feel like Battlefield? Yeah, it does feel like Battlefield to me. But I think some of the details in there are what people have an issue with. But let me hear your thoughts about it.
Yeah, I think the essence of the mode has been removed. I mean, I can understand why the decision was made to change Conquest, and it stops those end of round moments where people say, "Oh, don't spawn in," and all this kind of stuff. And if you speak to some of the developers, that's the kind of line that they go along. But I found that in my experience of playing Conquest, that situation doesn't happen all that often, and therefore I feel that the changes that they've made are maybe not unjustified, but maybe just unwarranted. I mean, they're trying to solve a problem, and I get that. As developers, you want to try and make sure that your modes and the game in general is performing the way you want it to. But I don't feel that the reason they've changed it is really warrants what they've done. I think they've removed the essence of it. You don't get those end of round clutch moments anymore. Just feel like some of the tickets are just way up on one team or way up on the other. It's actually quite rare that you get a similar amount of tickets down at the end of a Conquest game anyway. and you've removed the aspect of, killing players in a first-person shooter. In Conquest, if you kill players in previous Battlefield games, that would change the ticket count on either team. If you killed somebody, it would reduce their tickets. If they killed you, your team would lose a ticket. It's a first-person shooter. You are supposed to shoot people. And in Conquest now, you don't have to shoot people in order to win the game. So I understand that it's focusing more on the objective, but they've removed a huge aspect of the game that I think is very important, because if one team is just overall dominating the map and killing more people, then I genuinely think they deserve to win more than the team that aren't doing all the killing. I mean, does that sort of fall in line with something that you would think?
Yeah, I kind of feel like it can go both ways. I personally feel like it doesn't make a great difference, but I think what it does is that some players really care, obviously, about playing the objective more. That's me. Some people care more about focusing on dominating the other team, killing the players, and just keeping them pinned down. Now, here's the thing. If you take kills out of the ticket count, that still is important. Still, like, maintaining pressure, still clearing out those bases, ruining them, taking them down, eliminating them any way you can, and staying on top of the other team. Getting all those kills is really important. You need to do that, obviously. It's just that it doesn't contribute to the tickets in terms of them degrading. But flip side, yeah, I mean, if the kills did count towards the tickets, well, then that person who's actually engaging and taking down more players is having a very literal consequence on the sort of the actual, I suppose, physical degradation or increase of tickets on that mode. So I can kind of see it both ways. I personally, even though I'm a person who champions objective play and team play, I personally don't mind either way. I feel like it's not the most critical thing. On the other hand, what I will say is I quite like it from a objective player, a team player. I care more about the overall end of round result than I do my specific personal performance in a round. And people on my YouTube channel have always sort of noted this, that when I post gameplay, it's a little different sometimes than other Battlefield players, because I sometimes will post rounds where I didn't do especially well that round, because we all have that. Nobody does amazing every round except maybe Level, but nobody does amazing every round. I have to, or Jack or X or anybody, right? But nobody does amazing every single round. They just don't. Okay, everybody has unlucky situations. You get caught out, you get pinned down, you get in unlucky, unfortunate situations which are out of your control. These things happen. But sometimes the overall play of that round is way more interesting than what's happening just with you, and that's why I like to post that stuff. So, look, from somebody who I very often, I think we were playing around this week in the beta, and our guys were kind of like tucked in this house, and there was like a couple of light tanks around that were blowing the crap out of everything. There was gas shells all over the place, and it was chaos. Things were on fire. It was anarchy. And I was just like, we've got to get to that point. We need to take it. And they were just like, oh, we're taking fire. I was like, come on, let's go. Ran out. I took down like 2 guys, and then I got wasted. So I kind of ran out into the fire and was just like trying to get in the mix and stuff. But it's about that kind of, I was valuing more trying to just get to that point and cap it than am I going to maintain staying alive very long as I go out here. And again, I just feel like, so from that point of view, it does, I suppose, lean in favoring that kind of gameplay than it does sort of being more considered and valuing your tickets and valuing your life. But like I say, there's a balance there, right? Because arguably, like you say, towards the end of rounds, people value their life more, and that's a constructive thing as well. I mean, when I do my armor patrols and stuff like this, I sometimes set parameters for the guys who are playing, and I say, look, basically, you get 1 revive, and then once you get killed again, you're out, and you actively see the gameplay change, because they suddenly are like, shit, we're gonna be out of the game. We need to be very cautious about what we're doing now. Changes the way people play. So yeah, in Battlefield, if the tickets count, like you say, whether it comes down, people are going to value it more. But the very last point I'll just say on that is that, like you say, I agree that yes, those rounds where you come down on a very small amount of tickets and people are going, don't spawn, they're the most exciting Battlefield games. They really are. Yes. But they really don't happen often. In fact, I rarely see that on a public round. The only time I see it is on my own, when I was running my own private servers, and I had like 2 teams of very tactical, very sort of hard, objective-focused teams playing one another. And so, of course, because they're both fighting with absolute passion, the ticket counts do kind of get burned down much harder, and so we ended up more often in those kind of very tight ticket situations, which is exciting. But I think if you're looking at an overall experience, no, it doesn't happen so much. So is it important? But let me just say to you, in your response to this, do you feel if it got switched back the other way, that they could still push team play? Do you feel like that's something that they can bring back with Conquest by making these changes here? Do you think they can really bring the objective gaming? Because that's the main thing, is like, even the, I have said for ages about changing ticket counts, making changes to the way people cap objectives, all these kind of stuff, but we're playing the beta and it's open. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is the audience that are going to be playing the game. People do not seem particularly objective focused. Maybe like 25, 30, 40% of the team seem it, but at least half are absolutely not. And I just wonder whether anything can happen with that now. What do you think? And I guess, sorry, your response about Conquest.
I mean, I generally agree with you in your assessment that not many players are objective focused. And as much as DICE have got grand intentions of trying to make sure that people look after the objectives and help their team as much as they can, I mean, I'm just getting to the point with Battlefield where I understand that they're trying to broaden their audience. And the more you try and broaden your audience, and you spoke about this in one of your videos the other day, where AAA titles are diluting what a game is actually about. Because if you try and encapsulate a massive audience with lots of different types of people, you then have to cater to all of those people. And that's what they're trying to do with this new Conquest mode, where they're removing lots of different barriers and just saying, look, all you have to do is go and cap the flag and then move on to the next one. But still, not many people are interested in doing that, because they know that Battlefield can have those moments where you can do some crazy things, and people are looking to do their own thing within Battlefield and do something awesome. And that doesn't necessarily mean playing the objective is the awesome thing to do. I think there might be, a middle ground that could be found between what they've got now in the beta and what we had before in Battlefield 4 and Hardline to an extent. I think that the Conquest Large version of the game should maybe go back to what we had previously, where I feel that kills should count towards the tickets and there's bleed depending on how many flags you hold against the other team. And I think what I'd like to see, and I think what a lot of other people would like to see, is a return of Conquest Small, or just simply Conquest, because that's missing from Battlefield 1. And I feel that the model they've got here in Battlefield 1 Beta, where you only focus on the objectives, would work better as Conquest, because you can have like 3 or 5 flags. I think it's usually 3 in Conquest Small. And if you were to only focus on, you can only capture the objective, and that's the only way that you're going to increment your tickets, then I think more people would be focused, because you've got a smaller player count as well. It's a more focused game. And I think you'd probably see a better result with this new system than you would on such a large map like Sinai Desert, because it is absolutely massive. I think that probably plays a part as well. Yeah. I mean, in your response, I agree that a lot of players just don't play the objective. And as much as DICE try and force people to play the objective, the people who bought the game, they're going to do what they want to do with it. They're not going to listen to somebody else. That's just the nature of human beings. So I agree, and I would like to see them return with Conquest Small and then put this scenario that we've got here in Conquest Small. And I think you'd probably see much better results just inherently because the game mode is a little bit more objective focused. Conquest Large, there's just so much going on, especially on such a large map with vehicles and everything else, that I think it's very difficult to focus people around objectives when there's so much going on. What do you think?
Yeah, I actually think that's a really good idea, but I think that I think it could go either side. I think it would benefit small or large. So I think you could flip it both ways. Large because of the distance involved. I suppose when you think about it though, because on the Conquest Large there's travel time, there's more travel time between the points, and therefore perhaps actually the kills do matter more. So like when you're at those points, it's like, so I feel like just sort of degrading the tickets in terms of you're moving around the map more, and so it kind of can help to give, I suppose what I'm saying is it can kind of help to give importance to actually traveling to a point and so on, So it's like if your life counts, you're more likely to think, well, actually, I need to flank and move all the way around here because that's going to be a safer option for me. I'm more likely to cap that point. Whereas if you're in a smaller situation, like you say, you can kind of throw yourself at stuff a little bit more, and you would have a very intense gameplay. I think that actually changing that up and having small and large, but having them work slightly differently, would actually be a really big deal. The only problem that I have with it when I think about it really is, like you say, in terms of trying to get people to actually play the objective, it's not complicated. We're not talking like big stuff here. It's ABCs, It's like the basics of, of FPS objective gameplay. We're talking real simple stuff, alphabet blocks here, right? And it's just kind of like, look, if people struggle with that, and you put 2 game modes in and call them the same thing, but just small and large, do you think people are actually? I know where you're going with this. Do you think people are going to get it, and therefore do you think that's going to sort of slightly damage the great idea that you've had here? Actually, that I think it. I love it, and I think it'd be great for sort of the people that I play with. But would everybody get it? I'm not sure, and they'd have to make it super clear somehow. I'm not sure.
I mean, I can see that in my own suggestion. I mean, I think the problem that you have is that it's the classic Battlefield mode. Conquest is the original game mode that came with Battlefield. And, you know, from a standpoint, I mean, I didn't come into the series at the first Battlefield game, but I've always known Conquest to be a certain way. And for the majority of the time, I didn't feel like there was a huge problem with the game mode. I don't think that the changes that have been made are really necessary. And that's probably my high-level point that I'd like to make about Conquest, is that it wasn't really broken, so I don't really know why they tried to fix it. I mean, yes, we can say that in certain circumstances that the team play aspect of Battlefield has been reduced. But I don't think that's because Conquest is an outdated mode. I just think that's the audience that play Battlefield is very different to what it was 15 years ago. So in that aspect, I would just go at a high level and say it wasn't broken, so I don't know why they tried to fix it.
I'm going to disagree with you there, because I do feel like it needed changing. I do feel like it needed moving forward. In Battlefield 4, in Conquest, yeah, of course, it still played Conquest-like in that you would move around, cap points, etc. But you would have people, I mean, although I will say that obviously having had the CTE and the work that they did there in terms of actually updating Battlefield 4 so that capping points was more relevant, okay? But like you're saying, I mean, the CTE and the way they made those changes there literally was changing Conquest. It did change it, because how it was previously when Battlefield 4, Battlefield 3 were sort of around, the tickets and the sort of the points you were getting for scoring objectives didn't really equate to the effort that you had to put in there. And that's why they ended up, you know, people focus a lot more on kills, because they just think, well, why the fuck am I going to make all the big effort to get over there and do this when I can just literally just sit here and just cut people down? It's like, yeah, it makes, you know, you can't argue with that. It makes total sense. But they changed it up. They added more points in. And so it did become more relevant to get onto those capture points in Battlefield 4 towards the end of Battlefield 4. But again, it's kind of a shame it came in at the end. If it had only been like that from the beginning, it would have been beautiful. But nonetheless, they did work and they did get it. So, you know, you've got to give them a point for that.
Yeah.
But so in Battlefield 1, I mean, Level Cap made a really good point in his video where he was talking about this. And he said, you know, it's kind of like they really have gone the other way. It's sort of like they've kind of overcompensated, and it's like
typical DICE fashion as well. Typical DICE always go completely overcompensate for something.
Yeah, you know, and then well, all I was going to say was that, you know, very often when I'm playing Conquest, if I'm playing with my squad, and if we're playing on, you know, not a public server, if you're playing with other people who know what they're doing, you cannot sit with like 5 or 6 guys on a point, because it's too fluid. You've got to keep moving. You've got to use something that I've talked about literally for years. One of the most important things in Battlefield is momentum, keeping momentum and hitting points one after the other. So you clear through a base, you take that base, and then the other team, because you've wiped them out from the area, are having to respawn somewhere else. So you need to keep that weight of force moving. You hit that C point, you take it, you leave one guy capping, and everybody else keeps moving forward. So you like, we're clear, okay, stay here, the rest of you go to B, now, go. Everybody starts running, and they get down to B. But you know, no, people don't want to do that now, and public certainly don't want to do that, because they want those big scores from capping those points. On the other hand, I've been playing on these public games where, like, my squad are like 3-4 times the score of everybody else on our team, because we stay and cap the points, and everyone's like just running around all over the place like headless chickens, and we're kind of like, okay, is this really working? I mean, I actually said this in some of my videos a while back. I said, like, when I was talking about what can we do to improve objective gameplay, what can we do? And you know, in a literal sense, there isn't a great amount. I mean, like you say, you can't literally force people to play a certain way. You can't do that. You can have a private server and say, hey, if you're playing today, can you please try and play this way? That's the way we like to work it. You know, that's fair enough, right? But if it's a public open server, nothing you can do about it. But what I did say was with changing the points around and so on, it was very much kind of like, look, we got to try this and see what happens, you know? And if it doesn't work, well, then we know, and then maybe we say, like, okay, well, there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to you just have to take it and just deal with it, right? I think that's maybe where we're at. People don't seem to really care too much about capping those points and stuff. I guess the only caveat I would say is it's the beta. Maybe people are just more interested in running around, testing stuff out, driving tanks, blowing shit up and just messing around. And maybe when the game comes out, people, I always say don't judge a game in the first 2 weeks. People always put out their first impressions. That's fine. I'm not really in favor of big multiplayer games getting reviews in the first week, because I think you honestly can't judge it at that point. I think you have to wait and see how the community feel. The first 2 weeks, people are leveling up hard. They're trying to score unlocks. They're doing all these other things. They're not too concerned necessarily about the core gameplay, because they're too interested in all the different things that are happening, and they're looking and they're exploring. They're learning the maps. People are getting used to it. There's a period of, like, I would say about 2 weeks. Once you get past that point, then start to look at how people are playing the game. How are they working with the objectives? Because that's when you can start to judge it.
Definitely.
So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, so that's my point, is with I think they've overcompensated the score a little bit. Do you feel like that? Do you feel like they can just rein it back a little bit?
I think so. I mean, like, it's an obscene amount of points you can get for capturing flags. It's absolutely tremendous. It's great to see that come up on the screen. Always makes you feel good, but it feels cheap. Especially when you're at the start of the round. You're running towards the first set of objectives. Within the first 30 seconds, you're like, woohoo, I've got 800 points for running 50 meters. It doesn't really...
Let me just break in there and say about those first capture points, just because it's pertinent really quickly. So yeah, on those first cap points, I mean, it's really important, because now what you tend to see is people move up to that first cap point and they all stay to cap it, whereas that never used to happen. You'd have like 1 or 2 people stay, everybody else moves into the rest of the map. So it's slowing it down, but also it's potentially giving the other team, if they decide to just move forward, you lose that kind of ability to take control of the map in the very early stages, which is super important. It's way more difficult to take a base than it is to sort of just, to retake a base, capture it off the other team, than it is to obviously just cap it straight out from the front, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that you find a lot of people hang around because they want that big XP for standing on a point and capturing it. And like I said, at the start of the game, you are securing your bases so that within the next few minutes, you've reached a point where the two teams are settled within the game. But like, you find, as you were just saying, that sometimes a team will choose to sit on their first objective and maybe only capture the next one closer to the center of the map. And then the other team is already dominating 5 out of the 7 flags. So, I think we're reaching a point with it where, like you were saying, they're testing it within the beta. Maybe they'll stick with it, maybe they'll change it, but we know they're going to get a lot of data out of what is actually happening, whether people are sitting on points and capturing them, or whether, as you say, people just running around like headless chickens, going to do whatever the hell they want to do.
Yeah, so let's move on, and so we're going to talk, I guess, a little bit about performance of the beta, where we are with this now. What I will say is that the kind of generally, there's a bit of discussion always about what does a beta actually mean. I mean, essentially, between different studios, a beta is kind of open to interpretation a little bit on just its definition. But I would say personally, a general definition for a beta is that the game should be getting pretty close to as complete as you can make it. That's generally your definition of a beta. A beta is for stress testing, or it's for just trying to finesse those bugs out, just trying to find little bits and pieces. There are things that they can't really test in QA. Once you throw it out there to a big audience, you suddenly get a lot more data. That data can help you actually sort of refine things, make changes, and maybe see trends that you didn't see before. So it is an important thing. On the other hand, I really feel like we have seen quite a lot of bugs, way more than I thought I was going to see. Yeah, it's just been somewhat off-putting. I've been struggling to sort of stay constructive in my head about that, because it's just been bothering me a lot, and it's honestly unnerved a little, because I think people have been a bit like, is this like how it's going to be? So I guess there's a question there of like, look, we get it. Whenever you're, I was talking to David Serland on Twitter recently this week, and he was saying like, look, the build changes very quickly. In fact, he was saying like almost sometimes when they're working on builds, it can change as much as every 5-10 minutes sometimes, if they're sort of making an edit and then they put it back out there to test, and they bring it back, they edit, and they, so it can change a lot. But obviously they have to choose a build to put out there for people to test, right? And I think, Wes, you'd said a little bit about how they were sort of looking to, this was more of a stress test than maybe actually like refining all the elements, correct?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I know for sure that this is an older build of the game. And just to put my own point across, I agree with you that when putting an older version of the game out there, they're quite at liberty to do that. But as we know, with many consumers out there, first impressions are extremely important. And if you decide to put out a version of the game that, let's take the rank bug in this beta, for example, people are really annoyed that they can't easily unlock their weapons and they can't see their progression to the next level of the class. And even me, I was a bit like, it's a bit frustrating, because then I had to quit the server, jump back in and do this. And then somebody found the workaround where you could use the website. But, all of that stays in somebody's head You know, that's their first perception of Battlefield 1.
Yep.
They played the game, they couldn't unlock the weapon they wanted because there was a bug in it. And I know it's an old version of the game, but still, for me personally, that's not a good first impression to have. It is an older version of the game, and the ability for them to do that is they're simply there to stress test the servers. And I'm sure all of you out there have experienced some form of issue with the servers over the first few days of the beta. But we do have to remember that Battlefield 4 back in the day was rubbish when it first came out in terms of its stability. By the end of Battlefield 4, it was extremely good. Now, with Battlefield 1, they don't want to make the same mistake, and therefore I can understand that putting out an older build purely to focus on server stability is a good thing to do. But I think from a consumer standpoint, they're not interested in that because they will just assume should have just assumed the servers will work. So what they want is the content. What am I actually going to get out of Battlefield 1? Do I like the gameplay? Do I like the way the characters feel? Can I get the right gun that I want? Is it doing what I expect it to do? And I agree with you, in this beta, there are a lot of bugs stopping people from doing what they want to do. And that's going to give a negative perception around what they've already seen from the game.
I mean, also, I just feel like if they really wanted to, if that was their core focus for this, was to stress test, just say so. Like, people will understand. It's fine. You know, we all understand how games work and how the hoops you've got to jump through to get that product out there. We understand the importance of making sure the servers can cope with the players and the way the build works. We know this is something which has to happen. Just say, like, look, guys, this is the primary focus, and then you can, of course, also experience all these other elements. Just say that out of the gate. Be really honest about it. Just make it clear right from the start. But don't add, like, I mean, like I've said before, I'm just such an advocate, and I'm so focused on anti-hype of games, you know, just building stuff up. It's counterproductive because you give people all this expectation and you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to play. And then you get in and it's like, like this has happened and this and I can't, and it exacerbates your negative feeling. It makes it worse. You know, if they had said, like, look, this is mainly a stress test, guys, you also get to play with all the game, obviously we're still sort of working stuff out. People would have got in there and be like, well, you know, they're working it through, it's okay. But no, it's because you get that big hype, you know, can't wait, so much excitement, and then you get in and things are not working and it's all this and this. And again, the other thing is, you've got to remember, those of us who are, let's just say, I suppose, more actively involved in following the development of games, because you got to remember, not all gamers are. You know, a large proportion of gamers don't necessarily take an active interest in all of the nitty-gritty details that are coming around here. Obviously, there's, you know, big percentage out there that are, but there's also a big percentage which are not. Okay, there's the way more kind of casual people. Nothing wrong with being a casual gamer. We've all got stuff to do, right? But the point that I'm trying to make is that if you aren't kind of generally aware of the fact that with these kind of builds, these things may happen. I mean, myself, as someone who has obviously spoken to a lot of devs, and I've been through and looked at all processes that happen with these things, whilst I can feel frustrated at some of the things in the beta and they piss me off and they concern me, I can still put a little asterisk there and be like, okay, well, we'll put a pin in this and see how it goes, you know? But other people may look at it and go, what the fuck, like, it doesn't work, like, and they'll take it in a much more kind of literal, like you say, first impression, and then you just take that away. I've had a lot of people messaging me on Twitter and leaving comments on my YouTube videos saying, played it for an hour, uninstalled it. And it's like, wow, like, that's pretty, you know,
yeah.
Maybe they don't care to the point they're just like, you know, we're so confident of a game, we don't give a damn, we're just putting it out there and whatever. You know, maybe that's it. They're so confident about how well the game's going to do. I don't know.
I think genuinely it's not only Battlefield, but I feel that a lot of games have their issues, and you're quite right with the hype that's within the community. I'm never going to stop somebody getting excited for a video game.
Oh, no.
And in a certain way, I feel that I'm still at a point where I really get excited when a new game is announced. But I think, yeah, a lot of what's going on within the whole gaming community is that lots of games promise many things and then don't deliver. So when people have that first perception of played it for an hour, don't like it, uninstalled, although I don't feel that's not the way I would approach it, I would give the game more time, as you say, and you know, I don't blame people for feeling that way, because you know,
we're looking at you, Ubisoft, all right?
So, yeah, you're quite right. Some games just don't deliver, and the reason they've got this perception now, and I think you'll agree with me that over the last sort of maybe 5 years in terms of gaming, it's slowly ramped up to this point where people want it really quickly, and if it's not what they expect it right away, then they're just going to put it on the floor and walk all over it. Because
there's a lot of games out there to play. you know?
Yeah, and I mean, like, if it's not Battlefield, then, you could go play Titanfall or Call of Duty, or, you want to play some real-time strategy games and MMO games. There are so many games for you to play that you don't have the time to sit around and wait for somebody to fix it. If your first impression is it's broken, you're going to put the game down, you're going to go play something else. And I understand that mentality. And I don't blame anyone for having that mentality because they've been burnt so many times.
That's it. It's not even your first impression. It's not even about that even sometimes. It's also about like a series. You start to see a trend of how things go. And then you start to be like, well, this has happened 2 times before and we're starting to see the same issues. I mean, and when people are talking about putting 40, 50 pounds down, or even if they're shelling out for Ultimate, they're looking at about 100 pounds. Now, as I have often said, right, when people say it's too expensive or whatever, you can't say things are too expensive. It's relative, okay? It's relative to you personally, okay? Something that you might want to spend a lot on, but it doesn't really feel like a lot to you. It does to another person. It's very relative and specific, when you're into a niche sort of hobby or whatever, something has more, people have different guides for themselves personally on what it's worth. Okay, what it's worth to you is different from one person to another, so you can't necessarily say that. Okay, if you are a massive Battlefield fan, £100 out for the Ultimate and so on again, you might not really even think about it if you've got some disposable income. On the other hand, if this is going to be like you can basically afford to buy one big title for this year, and that's the title you want to be playing for the rest of the year, it's a big deal. You've got to try and remember that as well. It is a big deal for some people to be sort of working out like how they want to spend their money. And
so I agree.
Yeah, and so when you're looking at games like Division, you're looking at sort of Assassin's Creed for more single player stuff. Of course, we're looking at this. Okay, there's a lot of different games out there, and when you look at track records, and look, Battlefield 4, okay, they fixed it, but it had a lot of problems. Hardline, it had a lot of problems, and then we come into this in the beta, and you see a lot of issues. It's like, yeah, look, okay, we can rationalize it. We can say they're probably going to fix it. Like I think I said on Twitter this week, I said I'm concerned by the amount of people who are saying it's just the beta, it'll be okay. Oh, that's a big red flag for myself. Like, if everybody's response is like, it's just the beta, it's just the beta, it's just the beta, it's like, that really sounds like you're in denial. It really, you're like, it must be good, it must be good.
I think though, like, going on from that, people saying, oh, it's just the beta. You know what? If it is just the beta, let's let the studio prove that it's just the beta. That's the only thing that you can really come down to. At the end of it, you can say all you like about the beta, and let's put it this way. There are some bugs. I hate the fact that my progression to unlock weapons, which is a core mechanic in Battlefield, let's not forget that, is broken. That was was a bit annoying for me. Even I was frustrated about that. And, we can say it's just the beta, but the only way to know if it's just the beta is to look at the release when that comes around and go, well, is it any better? If it is, then, great, it was just the beta.
And
but if it's not,
you don't have to buy it at release. You can wait. No. If you're super paranoid, if you think it's going to be wrong, then just... I've said this before, like, even though sometimes I feel like, look, I know in my... I know I'm going to get this game. That's the end of it. It might be fucked up at the start. It might not be what I expected. I am going to get it. I know that one way or the other. I would probably pre-order right now. Like, it wouldn't make a lot of odds to me. I know everybody says don't pre-order, don't pre-order. Look, all I'm saying is I'm going to get it either way, so I don't care really one way or the other. But if you are concerned, if you think that it's not going to be what you think, if you're concerned by the beta, just wait. It's not a big deal. Okay, so...
Yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal. And at the end of the day, the last thing that you want to have in your head is a negative vibe about your favorite game. But I can understand people's feelings around this beta. I think, and this is going to be my last suggestion on the topic because we should probably move on. Yeah. But what I want to say is that Titanfall 2, although it may not be the world's most popular game, the way they addressed their test was to call it a technical test. They didn't call it a beta, and I agree that I think it's the industry that has changed the perception of what a beta should be, but I think that Respawn really did a good thing by calling it a technical test, because those two words to me tell me at face value what the reason is for them doing this. Like a beta, if you're savvy with technology and software, you know what a beta is, but not everybody does. Not everyone just goes, oh, it's the beta test. It's like, well, no, what about if it's a technical test? Oh, I know what they're doing. They're making sure the game's working properly. They're giving it out so that people can test it on a large scale. I know that. And I think that does really well. And maybe perhaps that negative connotation towards a beta would go away if it was redefined as to what it should be, because I think it's so blurry as to what a beta can be now.
Yeah, I think the language is really, really important for that as well. So let's go on something more positive then. Something that we have enjoyed. So the gunplay, we've enjoyed the gunplay loads, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I really enjoy the gunplay. Again, I've seen a lot of feedback that people don't like it, and I understand your point of view. A lot of people think that it's a bit more casual, and that spray and pray is the way to go in Battlefield One, and in some cases it is. But the reason I say the gunplay is better because there are defined roles for what you want to do. If you are the assault player, you have SMGs and shotguns. You are a close range player. If you're a medic, you've got a bit more long range. If you're support, you're suppressing and medium range. And if you're the scout, you're long range. The way that works, it's very defined and it's very easy to know what you're supposed to do with your class. So when you get into a gunfight, whoever is actually at the advantage because they're within their area of expertise, shall we say, with that class, it's 9 times out of 10 going to be them who win because, they have the better weapons for the scenario.
Yeah, I agree, and it is actually something that I really enjoy. From sort of getting really into this, I mean, here's the funny thing: is again, I actually this is the thing. It's like I love gunplay, and I love getting kills and sort of micro tactics and sort of getting around people and working out like, okay, he's gotten here, I'm going to just backtrack real quick, jump around him, and all those kind of things. The different engagements that you can have. I mean, one of the best moments that I had this week was sort of playing as a medic with my guys, and they were playing Rush on the second or third base, I think it was, and it was after you go through the arch, so that one there, so second to last, I think, and I was pushing up on the left side to A, and they were going all the rest of it. I was on my own completely, and I was getting suppressed left, right from machine guns and snipers, and I kept just moving to a point, hitting the deck, just drop a little med pack, get myself up, and then jump and run out and jump to the next point, and then I dropped a smoke, and I armed the MCOM, and of course, because they're using long-range snipers and stuff, none of them can run out there to get me, so I took the base down myself, so that was very, very pleasing. But the point was that, yeah, you have those defined roles. So I felt very much like I was kind of really playing and sort of getting in there and stuff. But then you flip that and you get to the more kind of close quarter stuff where you're in and around the sea base on Conquest, and it's just really furious, fast and furious stuff happening there. You'll turn a corner, there's 2-3 guys, and you drop those guys with your SMG, and then another guy comes through and just bayonets you in the back, and it's like you have that brutality going on there. The only thing I'll say, it's not gunplay, but I am not a fan of that front knifing. It's with shovels or whatever. I just dislike that. That's my one. In fact, that's probably I can probably think of many more, but that's my one caveat. Something that really sticks in me. I know people are saying like, yeah, but if you have low health, it kind of no. I just don't like it. And there was a moment where sort of I'd taken out one guy as assault with my SMG, and I swung around. There was another guy who had kind of clipped, and he was a bit low on health. He was changing, and I think he had his pistol or whatever, and he clearly sort of suddenly realized in his head, I'm not going to have any chance of taking this guy down because he's got the SMG, I've only got the pistol, and he just lunged at me and just hit me, and I was just like, dude, I was so annoyed because I'd started to fire at him. If he'd have not had that mechanic, I definitely would have had that kill, because he only had his pistol out. He wasn't going to be able to bayonet me or anything, so that frustrated the hell out of me. But I'll say that's probably one of my only things. The rest of it I do really, really enjoy. The sniping is good, the suppression with the LMGs is good, the medic class, I like the balance with those guns there, and again, yeah, the assault is really nice. The assault is nice because, again, it does focus that close quarter gameplay, and again, when you're trying to take out tanks and vehicles, you really do have to kind of get up close to them for now anyway, but yeah, so I like the balances.
I like the balance. I mean, I think there can be some improvements overall. I think that the one thing that I've never really liked about Battlefield games is a random bullet deviation. The way that there's no consistent spray pattern to a weapon, whether you're ADS or whether you're hip firing. I don't like that. I do, however, feel it's far too inbred within the Battlefield series now to really change it, because it would require, in the same way that Conquest has, it would require a huge amount of effort in order to turn the community round to a different model. I just don't like it. I feel that, you should always know where your bullets are going to go. It doesn't have to be like Counter-Strike level where you know the exact pattern, but I would like almost a channel of knowing where my bullets are going to go rather than just being all over the place. And I feel that the medic guns at longer ranges, even though they are like DMR style, and there are some marksman weapons you can use there. I mean, I've been using the Sebslader, which is a really cool weapon, but if you fire it really fast and use it to its full extent and use all of its rate of fire, the bullets go everywhere. And I'm like, this is completely defeating the point of me having a scope on this weapon. It's pointless. I may as as well just go back to using the iron sight. So overall, I find the balance to be very, very good. And as always, there's going to be little points where I kind of feel it's not great. And even in past Battlefield games, they never fix some of these things because they don't feel like it's really relevant. But overall, I'm very, very happy with the gunplay in Battlefield 1. I think it's very much skill-based, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, it feels very, like I say, furious. It's the best way I can describe. Even on the Conquest map that we've had, which is very big and open, when you are fighting in and around the buildings, it's very twitchy, it's very fast, it's very intense, and you're constantly having to like double check every angle for yourself. I really like it. I also really like the grenades. All of the different grenades I really enjoy. I like very much the gas grenade. I think that's a great mechanic. I like the speed of putting the gas mask on there as well. Although, yeah, I don't know. I also want to say something that I like is the transitions. So like when you're on the vehicles, some of the lighter vehicles with the MGs on the back, I like the fact that you literally physically climb and get onto the back of that. That's a really nice kind of physics. I like that sort of movement aspect. It feels real good. And I guess the only other thing that I'll bring in that I'm not so sure about right now is I said on my kind of jokey video this week was that, no bullet drop. It really, I mean, look, there is bullet drop. I know it was a joke, but people don't get my humor even after like 3 years. But it's like, look, yeah, it feels like when you're sniping there is no bullet. Like the joke I was trying to make was, if you're a long-time Battlefield player, it feels like there's no bullet drop. That was the thing. And I thought that was obvious, but no. But yeah, if you're a sniper, it's like, because I, for ages, was overcompensating. I was just like, man, what the hell is going on here? And then one of the guys is like, dude, there's like barely any bullet drop. You can just aim right at them and it'll just hit. I was like, really? Headshot. I was like, oh, okay. That makes things a lot easier. All of the other gameplay is good. Do you feel like that is a dangerous thing to make the sniping? Loads of people have commented and replied back to me, by the way, on my videos, saying like Luetin is just because they've got like higher velocity, it's more realistic, it's how bullets behave, blah 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, I get it, but it's not real life, it's a game, so you have to tailor stuff to make it work within the context of what you're doing. Do you feel like that's a bad thing? Do you feel like we're going to suddenly have an epidemic of snipers now because it's like, for it all, inverted commas, easier? I don't know.
I mean, to an extent, I think that the sniping in the game is easy. I think it's easy to point it at somebody and shoot. It still requires you to be an accurate person, though. So it is dependent on how good you are with a controller or a mouse and keyboard, because some people are terrible and like they might be picking up the game for the first time. They may never even play sniper, so they probably still won't touch it. I think it's the people who are already a good sniper or somebody who's competent at using them are finding them easier than previous games and therefore reporting that it's too easy to use them. I think if you went back to a Battlefield 4 style system where, there is some significant bullet drop and that the bullet velocity of the weapons is slower, I think that you'd then find that the scout class doesn't match the gameplay speed that Battlefield 1 offers. Because we know that Battlefield 1 is a fast-paced game. So if your bullets that you fire from your sniper rifle do not fire very fast, and suddenly you're standing still for an extra, maybe, half a second, might not sound like a lot, half a second, and somebody shoots you. It's like, well, no, because what I can do is duck out from behind a rock, fire my shot, maybe get a hit marker, maybe I miss, but then I duck back and I move again. Like we were talking about the assault class being very close quarters, very fast and furious. The sniping is very fast and furious in its current model. Yeah. If you were to make it slower, you'd lose that. And I think what they're going for in Battlefield 1 is this constant movement system. Well, you're not going to achieve that if you make it slower. I understand people's concerns about it, and I think that DICE need to do something to make the snipers less powerful, but I think reducing the bullet speed and the bullet drop is probably not the way to go. I
can take the point that they're definitely trying to make it fit within the context of how they've pushed the game now in terms of it being faster and more things just happening generally. Yep. Although I will say, I don't know if you've found this, maybe but from the people that I play with, we have found situations quite often where we're trying to get out in cover, and for sure you can drop smoke grenades. I mean, it's another benefit. People don't use smoke enough because people always want to take offensive grenades. Smoke grenades are super useful. They're really good in so many situations. If you, like I was saying about that rush base that I took basically by myself, it's because the snipers had set up right, and they were looking at that base, and they were thinking, well, it's all open, we've got this, no problem. And the rest of their team were focused on the choke point, because that's where my whole team were pushing through, so they're obviously dealing with that, right? I had a couple of smoke grenades at the most open points that I had to cross. No problem. They didn't even fire a shot because they couldn't see me, So it's like there are ways around it. On the other hand, I do feel like I say, some you you shouldn't necessarily be forced to counter with something. I don't feel like that's I never feel like it kind of comes back to, you could apply it to almost a multitude of FPS titles that have been and gone, where there's a perk or some kind of thing where you basically have to take to counter something else in the game. And I never like that. And it's like, I don't want to be in a situation in Battlefield 1 where I'm in every class thinking I need to take that smoke because I don't want to get pinned down, and it's like, I don't want that. I want it to be able to, I feel like you say, I feel like there's a room for a tweak, a compromise. I feel like snipers need to be toned back a little bit, not nerfed, just a slight tweak there, to sort of just allow a little bit more variation. So I don't want to have to, every time I run into the open, think, oh my god, I'm going to get hit by like 3 snipers, because that's what's been happening right now. I don't want that in every single situation. Again, if I was to use smoke, I can deal with that. But again, I don't want to have to deal, because the other grenades are good. The gas grenade is good. The incendiary grenade is scarily good. That's the other thing. I hate that thing. So many times I've been burned to death. I'm just like, no. But it is good. Like, if you throw it up on top of a roof and you just see them jumping off on fire, like, that's quite fun. I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think snipers could be tweaked a little, or do you feel it's just the way it is now with this game?
I think that they could do with a little bit of tweaking. I put up a video just now about playing the rifleman, and the way that the bolt and the rechambering of the round is extremely quick. It's very, very fast. I think maybe in a way of, like I was saying, obviously not to reduce the speed that much, but just the whole way that they can fire so quickly and the damage that they can pull off whilst doing it. I don't think the way is changing the speed. I think it's the way the damage affects you. I mean, I feel like if you were to reduce the damage, people would complain and say, well, it's a sniper
rifle. People would go mental, dude.
They would go mental. But I mean, in my head at the moment, if you don't want to decrease the speed at which they operate, then my other suggestion would be to reduce their damage. And I don't know whether DICE are going to come up with a solution between those two things. They may have other metrics they can use, because let's face it, Battlefield has got so many metrics to their weapons that even we don't understand. That I'm sure there are many things they can do. But in my own head, it's either reduce the speed at which they operate or reduce their damage, and neither of those is going to work. I think there needs to be a tweak that needs to be made, but I'm not quite sure what it is.
Just make it so sniper rifles jam sometimes.
That could be really cool.
No, I was joking.
It could be cool, but like, I mean, you'd have to have the right person at the right time to appreciate that, because let's face it, if it was some, we were talking about casual gamers on a Friday night, you come home from work and then your gun jams, it's like, nah, I didn't need this after my day at work, thanks very much.
Let me clear, no jamming, because you shouldn't ever be in a situation where some kind of random mechanic stops you from being in control of what you're doing. That shouldn't be a thing. But like I say, there's something to be said there, I guess. Right, let's really quickly touch on the map design, and then we'll just talk maybe about the vehicles last, I guess. So map design, I really like this map. Okay, I think some people have been a bit and it's too, because like for example, like Jack was I saw Jack's video where he was saying like it's the biggest map ever, although it's mostly desert, and it's like yeah, it is mostly desert, but you know what, I think it was like yesterday night or the night before, me and Super, one of the guys I play with, we took a light tank each. The other team did not like us. We took a light tank each, and we were driving around, and we were coming back from E towards A, and I was like, dude, look at this, it's epic. And I was like, look at the sand, it's so cool. Like going up those sand dunes and the lovely blowing sand. You can't get away from the visuals of this game. Like it's Battle Wars front. It's like you can't get away from that. But yeah, the sand is beautiful. I mean, I perhaps sometimes I maybe get a little bit more gushy about like the look of these things than because being an artist and a designer, it kind of like I spend ages sometimes in games just like looking at the rocks and being like, man, look how amazing that is. It's so beautiful. People are going to laugh at me for saying that, because I rant so much about how graphics are not the most important parts of the game. They're not. Like, people need to understand me. Look, graphics aren't the most important part, but they're still lovely. But it doesn't mean that there's other things which are more important to talk about, but you can still appreciate something. There's you can do both. It's okay. But yeah, so I love the look and the feel of this. It looks fantastic, just like I did with the other one. The art style for Battlefield has become probably one of the the defining aspects of the game, is what I was trying to say. Yep. But let's just get into the mechanics of it. Let's just get into it from a sort of physical, how it's laid out, how each section of the map works. So for starters, each area, each cap point in Conquest, but even in Rush as well, feel very individual. They have very specific ways in which you can play around those points. That's really important. You don't want it so that just everywhere feels the same and you don't really feel like there's any kind of change. You have to adjust the way you play depending on where you're moving around the map. And also, some people have been like, well, E is all the way out there. What's the point of that? It is important because sometimes you can move down there to cap that point to get extra assets and so on. So there's a range of ways in which it plays. And also, I just like the kind of general vistas and the look and feel of it. I think that, and the dynamic of moving around. You know, you go from those sort of more intense urban areas, you come out, you have a bit of ground cross, then you're into the hills and the mountains. I really like it. I feel like everything works very well in that map.
I think the map is great. I really like it. It's visually stunning. It is absolutely incredible. I mean, perhaps the people on console might sort of decry me for this, but on PC, it looks incredible.
You sound like such an arse when you say on PC. It's just like it's like nobody can say that and not sound like an idiot. It's like is it like on PC, but it's true. It does look amazing on PC. So there you go. You know,
it does look amazing. And I think the map and I will move on for this. The majority of the map when you play Conquest, I feel flows very well. The area around the top part of the map where all the flags interlink, there's a natural flow between each flag and each section so that you can move backwards and forwards. It doesn't feel like they're at any point disconnected. The only one that I do feel is disconnected is E. From my point of view, I like the fact that it's out there in the middle of the desert, and I like the fact that DICE have tried to create this pivot point where you could capture this flag and potentially turn the battle back in your favor. Because, as you say, you can get assets for collecting it. You can have horse spawn and a tank spawn there. Or is it a plane? I think it might be a plane.
I think it's both, isn't it? Maybe. I think it's maybe both, but I could be wrong.
But whatever, you can get something significant for taking it. I just feel that, I'm sorry to side with someone else, but I feel that there's so much desert that's not being used, and I feel that there would be benefit from moving E up a little bit towards where D is. It doesn't need to be massively close, but I actually stood at the boundary point of E on the capture zone, and it was a good 510 meters to D, that is a huge distance. And for people who aren't familiar with previous Battlefield titles, even 500 meters in some cases was a whole map. In previous Battlefield games, it could have been the whole map. So that's a long way for you to run. And I feel like I like the way that E can be captured from the sky. I think that's really cool, and DICE should get bonus points for that because that's a different mechanic we haven't really seen in Conquest before, and I think that's great. I think it would be better if E was maybe 300 meters from D instead of 500, and I think it would benefit just moving the map close a little bit. I know it's the biggest Battlefield map in history, and maybe that's a marketing thing, but does it need to be the biggest map? And I don't know if it needs to be.
Here's the thing that I'll say about that, right? I think that I can take your point that it could be a little bit closer. I feel like it maybe could. But consider this, okay? The fact that it's so far out means that you have to consider how you get there. So you're unlikely to take a land ship because the time, right? If it was a little bit closer, I think people would be like, well, it's a little way, but I can get there in a land ship. And I feel like they almost deliberately put it out there. Because I say, me and Super went down there with some light tanks at the beginning of a round. And we got about halfway and we're like, man, this is much further than we thought. It was taking a really long time. And we suddenly realized that we'd sort of, inhibited our game by spending so much time driving out there, and we really could have used that force elsewhere, and it was disproportionate. We didn't need to send that much. So taking the lighter, faster vehicles, you can get there damn fast in those light vehicles, those little trucks and stuff. You can move real quick. It takes a very short amount of time to get out there. To be fair, even running, for sure, it takes a little while, but I ran from E to D one time because I had a public guy in a truck and he refused to drive. So I was just like, screw this, I'm running. This will be quicker. So I ran, and it didn't take that long. Not in the context of a Conquest game anyway, which can be quite, they can be reasonably a good amount of time. But still, I feel like I take the point. I feel like it definitely could be moved a bit, but I would say 400, not 300. And that's my compromise. I feel like it could, just because I feel like I don't want it to be a situation where the tanks are just like, we're going to cap this and then this and then this. I think there should be a base where the tanks can't. In fact, I feel like that should be the case on most of the maps, actually. I like that mechanic of having a base where the tanks don't have a role to play, that it's more kind of the light, fast vehicles, or even, that, like you said, the planes have a role to play there. So I like it. It's an interesting aspect to this map overall. But yeah, I think we can both agree overall this map works really nicely. It works nicely and it looks good. So
yeah, I mean that's a big part of what Battlefield is now. I think if anybody saw a new Battlefield game that wasn't on par or better than the previous, that people would complain about that. I think it's one of the cornerstones of Battlefield now. But along with that point, I just want to maybe make a suggestion and see how you feel about this, because a lot of people have suggested it to me. Maybe just making the flag more robust, because it feels very... I don't know, it feels very naked. There's only like 2 buildings there and some light cover. And there is an extremely powerful weapon, the Tankaver there. And I feel like if they put it and turned it into maybe just like a mini village with a large sort of road that goes through the middle of it, so that tanks can flow through. You leave the skybox there so that the planes can take it. But, have a few more buildings there for some infantry fights. I feel if you made the flag more robust, maybe you would make more people want to go there.
I mean, it's got that AA on the roof. I mean, what if you made it like a mini sort of little military outpost, almost kind of like a what's the French Desert Force? I can't remember the name for it. The Legionnaires, is it?
I think so. Yeah.
So you could have, but anyway, I'm just thinking of it in the context of a style of the building. You could have like a enclosed space. So instead of having that building and then like all the space around it, just have a perimeter wall which goes around it. So it becomes like an assault point, and you actually have to. So you could end up having like some proper like mini assault battles there, and then maybe it would be worth like taking the time to actually sort of bring at least a light tank with you to sort of assault that and things. So I feel like there could be some room for improvement in terms of designing that. Will they do that now and within the time? I don't know.
No,
maybe. But
probably not.
it would be cool. I like the idea. So
yeah, I think we're in agreement. The map itself is very good. I do understand other people's points of view that they don't feel the map is as good as the one that was in the alpha, because the map is so spacious and very varied in what it can offer depending on where you are on it. I understand people's feelings that they think the alpha map is more inclusive. I think on the alpha map, St. Quentin Scar, when you were playing on Conquest, no matter where you were on the map, I think there was a good balance between aerial, ground vehicle and infantry combat. On Sinai Desert, there are distinct areas of the map that benefit each of those different combat types. And I think overall, if you play in vehicles, and we spoke about this with the balancing, that vehicles are extremely powerful because you don't have everything unlocked in order to combat them. Yep. So I think that's a reason why people feel that this map isn't as good for playing in the beta as the one that was in the alpha.
The alpha map is more, it's more inclusive in terms of different gameplay styles. This map cuts you down a bit more in terms of that. You have to play specifically around certain points, and I feel like this map is more of a real Battlefield map than the other map. The other map was a very generalized FPS map. You've got buildings here and there. It's kind of all fairly equidistant. It's sort of, there's no kind of like tactical thought has to go into it. You just go from point to point. It doesn't really matter which direction you run in, you're going to find something. And so I think when people are saying they like that map more, they probably like it more just because it's more straightforward. And also, I'm just going to say it felt very World War II to me. I think that's another reason why people maybe subconsciously really liked that map, because it just felt World War II-y. It was muddy, but there's trees, there's little villages. It felt very, that kind of French sort of village style thing going on there. And it kind of just had that all about it. And I think people just make that association there. I think we're not going to get into that whole sort of, the World War I, World War II thing. That's probably a discussion for another day. But from that point of view, I feel like that's why people liked it. I feel like it had that dynamic, and I think this is a very different style of gameplay. You have to play it in a different way, and I think that's probably why people feel a bit like they wanted to be able to sort of do whatever they want to do, because that's what people like. And this map actually actively channels you to play in a certain way, like I said, because some of those specific points are very individual. When you're fighting on F and you're fighting sort of through the canyons, and you've got to be worried about like what the hell is going on above you, and also there's not very many hiding spots in and around there, so you're quite exposed. It's quite a scary place to be. If you're on C, there's a multitude of places to hide. If you're going out to E, again, you're exposed, travel time. There's all sorts of different plays and different ways that you can make that work. on St. Quentin Scar, different. They all feel, well, to me anyway, it all felt fairly similar-ish no matter where I was on the map. So I felt like people had maybe a more consistent style of gameplay there.
No, I totally agree with you. And you know what? When this game fully comes out, Sinai Desert, I don't know if it's going to be a popular map. Based on the feedback that I've had, it's not everyone's favorite. I don't think it will be anyone's. It won't be the favorite map in the game. But there are, most Battlefield games come out with 9, 10 multiplayer maps. So this is just 1/10 or 1/9 of what you can expect. St. Quentin Scar is there, and I agree that's a very good map, and I like it. And there are, maybe 7 or 8 others that you can choose from when the full game comes out that won't be like Sinai Desert. They will have different play styles, different ways for you to work the map in your favor. Maybe they force you to do something different. And, that will work itself out in the final release. This is the beta. Obviously, you're going to base your opinions on what is in it, but you have to understand that, this, as you quite rightly say, this is a map that makes you play in a certain way in order to succeed.
Yeah, and people love different sort of things. On my private server on BF4, we were always running Gulf of Oman because I love that map. I think it plays epic, and we had some of the best games I ever played on that map. But a lot of people don't like it because there's a lot of distance between some of the bases. But that's precisely why it's such a good game map, because you have to really consider the travel time when you're deciding where to go. That's actually a big factor. It's not like you just sort of look and go, well, we can go to here or here, but they're both pretty much the same distance, so it doesn't really matter. No, you really have to think like, well, are we going to really travel all the way over there? And then also the other thing, because of that travel time, it means that often the player base are not in a kind of, they're not in a position to easily support. So there's different plays. But that's a good thing. It means that there's variation. It means that it appeals to different people. It means that you can get different types of gameplay. The last thing you want is for all the maps to kind of play kind of the same. That would suck. So no, we don't want that. So, Wes, let's just talk about the last thing then, I guess, today. Let's talk a little bit about vehicle balance. I put tank balance here because I think that's what most people are talking about, but if there's anything to speak about the aircraft and other light vehicles as well, I feel like that's good to say. I think some people have been... I saw X mentioned about the Cavalry even being a bit OP, which I'm not sure I agree about that, but, some people have been talking about that a little bit. But should we start off on that one? I've been talking a lot, so do you want to crack in on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go with what I've experienced. I don't fly planes. I'm not very good at it, so I don't bother with it. So I won't speak about that at all for fear of giving an opinion that is really not well informed. So I'll speak about the ground vehicles. The light tank is extremely powerful, and people think that for various different reasons. First of all, I agree, it is very powerful, and at some ranges, the main cannon and I think, is it the canister shell that you can get as your secondary if you choose the default?
I'm not sure if it's actually called a canister shell, because I was calling it a canister shell and people kept correcting me. So I think it's a flak gun, but I might be wrong. I think, but whatever, it basically fires a load of crap at you and it wrecks you. That's all you need to know. So
it does, and I feel at range that thing is too powerful.
Me too.
As a secondary weapon, you should. The main weapon should be the most powerful. Your secondary should be less powerful, but they're, to come up for a different type of combat, or, to follow up after your primary has fired. I feel that the light tank is extremely powerful in its current form. And I think the secondary needs a little bit of, maybe not a nerf, but just a degrade overall. And I think the distance of which it can hit you a one shot is ridiculous. In terms of combating the vehicles, and this is what we're talking about with vehicle balance, I think that comes down to the way the unlock system works for the classes that are in the game. I think tank versus tank and, air vehicle versus ground vehicle, I feel is not a huge concern.
Yeah,
I don't feel like there's much of a problem there. Mm-hmm. I think it's infantry versus armor, and that's what a lot of people have. And it was a concern in the alpha, and in the beta, it doesn't appear to have been addressed in the way I would hope it had been addressed. I think we spoke about it. The AT rocket gun not being the default unlock for the assault class on this map, and I'm going to say that on this map, is something that's difficult to swallow. Because, your first unlock is the anti-tank grenade, isn't it?
Yeah. So
you have to get up close and personal with the tank in order to take it down. Then you've got the dynamite, which comes next. Again, you have to get up close and personal. It doesn't even stick to the tank anymore, so you have to be very quick with the dynamite if the tank's moving. And then comes the AT rocket gun. On this map, the AT rocket gun, I feel, should be the first unlock. But then when you consider the rest of the game, is every map going to be like Sinai Desert, where there's a huge open expanse of sand where you need an AT rocket gun to do damage to tanks? No. So in that aspect, I feel like the balance needs work, because at the moment people feel like armor is powerful because they can't kill them because they don't have the tools to do it. But I don't know if it's worth tweaking it, because other maps in the game may not present the same situation. It might be that you get up and close and personal with a light tank in the middle of a French village where the anti-tank grenade is perfectly fine for you to use. So
yeah, I mean, I already found that. Like, when we were doing that, I'd often be up in a building and the light tank or landship would roll in on a village, and you're just up there because you've been shooting people out of windows and stuff, and maybe half of your building is already blown out. You can just literally just be like, ping, 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 just drop them down. And of course, you can take the secondary. You can take the sort of light anti-vehicle grenade as well, you know, the sort of hand-thrown one, the smaller one. So you can actually have the heavy big tank anti-tank grenade, and then the little ones as well. So often you're throwing like 4 grenades, but bing, 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 and just dropping them down, and you know, you can do good damage, but it's very reliant on you being in a position to actually do that. But you know, like, here's the thing that I'll say. I really like the vehicles overall, but I like all of them. I especially like the design of the tanks, you know, because they're super interesting. It's just a really nice change up from seeing an Abrams all the time. And, you know, so they're nice, they're cool. You know, the idea of having... I feel like the light tank needs big work on it, and there's a lot of stuff you could change up with that. But there is actually a bigger change that I feel must happen. Like, I feel this is 100% critical. This is one of my biggest things that I feel absolutely has to happen, is you need to change the way it works in terms of just being able to sit in your tank and rep. Okay?
Yeah.
That needs to happen. That needs to change on the light and the heavy. You know, they got to do it. And the way that I would do this is very straightforward. I still feel like I like the idea of being able to sit in the tank and rep. I actually like that mechanic. It's an interesting idea.
Yep.
The way that I would do this is, if you are repping inside, then it reps slow. If you jump out, it reps fast. And that's the way that I think it should go, because when you're sitting in that tank, you can just sit there and it goes rep, 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 and it's jumping up 20 at a time. Man, you can just, like, if you're in any situation in the light tank where you feel like you're out of bounds, bang, just back it in reverse, get out of there really quickly, which is what I see people doing constantly. As soon as they take any fire, it's like a bloody AA tank on Battlefield 4. As soon as anybody fires a bullet at it, they just, like, drive across the map in reverse at full speed until they can get nice and safe, you know. It's like, oh, come on. But it's like, yeah, I see people doing this in the light tank. Very often the people that you see that are going, like, anything over 30-0 by the end of the round, what they're doing is they're sitting in a high traffic area gunning people down with the light tank. As soon as they take even a small piece of gunfire, they just back it into reverse, they get out of there, they rep their tank up nice and safe, then they come back in. They kill a few more people, they back it up, they rep it up, they come back in, and they just repeat, because there's no danger to them at any point. They can just keep escaping and repping and escaping and repping. At least when you are out of the tank, somebody could run up, jump in, or like stab you in the back or snipe you or something. There's some threat there. But it's like, you know, there's a good balance to be had there, where if you decide to stay in the tank, you're safe. That's a little extra bonus you get. You're safe in the tank, but it should take a little longer to rep up, okay? Maybe it takes twice as long to rep if you're inside. Jump out, you can rep real quick. So if you need to do like a little quick light repair, you want to just top up, bang, just jump out, jump it up, get back in. That's a change that I want to see happen. Are they going to do it? I don't know. I think that I would like to see that. I think that would be easy to implement, and I think it would make a massive difference to the way those vehicles play. It would make a massive difference to the way people think about playing with those vehicles. So that's something I really, really want to see. The other thing that I would say is with the light tank as well, they're pretty damn quick and nippy. I think in real life they were unbearably slow. In fact, actually, there's a friend of mine who sort of is very interested in history and stuff like this, and I think, again, I might be wrong, but from what I remember him saying to me was that the light tanks actually were going very slow, like we're talking a couple of miles per hour in real life. And again, look, I said earlier about realism. Yeah, okay, I get it. This is a game. It's not about realistic. But the point that I'm making is that in order to balance the kind of firepower that's on there, I feel like they could be slowed down a little bit. It would certainly prevent them from just like backing out there in full speed reverse. You know, once they take a bit of a hit and they start to decide I've got to get out of here, you can actually actively chase them a little bit instead of just being like, oh man, he's gone, he's out of here. So those are my two little things. I think they could be slowed down a little bit, and I would like to see those reps change up. Have you sort of have any opinions about how to improve the light tank situation?
I'm glad that you suggested getting out of the tank and making it quicker to to repair it outside the tank and slower inside, because that's the exact same suggestion I had in my own head.
It just seems sensible. It just seems common sense, right? You know.
I mean, like, people are well, I mean, fair enough, we know that Battlefield 1 is being aimed at a larger audience, but anyone who's played Battlefield 4 or Battlefield 3 or whatever, you have to get out of your vehicle to repair it. You know, that's a common thing. Most people know that that's what you have to do. I mean, and I think if you spawn in as the driver of a tank, you're able to do the self-repair. I don't know if you can jump out and repair in the beta, but I know for a fact that there was an asset that was in the alpha that allowed you to do that.
I think you can, because when I was playing again with Super and we both had tanks, I'd taken a lot of damage at one point. I was repping inside. He actually jumped out of his tank and started repping my tank from the outside at the same time. So we were really doubling up the rep there, you see.
All right, okay, so that makes sense. And I think because you jump out, it should, heal at that rate, the 20, go around into a full circle, another 20 health goes back. That speed is fine if you're out of your tank, because you put yourself in danger to get out of your tank.
Yep.
Therefore, someone could come along and kill you, and rightfully then take your tank. But if you're
just take your tank Battlefield 4 style.
Yeah, just jump in whilst you're still repping it.
There's nothing better than that, so...
But you put yourself in danger, and I feel that repping it at that speed from outside the tank is absolutely fine. Inside, it should be slower because you're completely protected by your tank, and you may not have that low health. If you get really low health in a tank and you're looking at armor, whether it's a guy throwing an anti-tank grenade at you or whether it's another tank, if you've got 4 health left, you're not going to get it repped in time. Someone's going to hit you with something else. You just jump out of your tank anyway. So, the speed should be slower inside your tank because you're encased in it and you're safe. Just to touch on air vehicles very quickly, self-repair in air vehicles is absolutely fine because you need to actually adjust the plane and put it in a position where you can actively repair it and you don't crash it, because the plane has to continue to move. You could land, but that's a silly thing to do. So I think the self-repair inside a plane is absolutely fine, and they can just leave that. There's no problem with that. One other thing for the light tank, was it the light tank or whether it was the heavy tank? I think the heavy tank, as much as it was really good to have 6 people in it, if there are 6 skilled players inside that tank, it's almost impossible to take it down. I think it's good to have it, but is it too powerful if everyone knows what they're doing? And what is the chance of everyone knowing what they're doing inside that tank? So does it need to be nerfed? I don't know.
That's a really tricky one.
Yeah, because is the situation going to arise all that often that they need to do anything about it? It's
tricky because, I mean, again, when we've been playing on the beta, and again, it's not. I'm not trying to say like my guys that I play with are like the best Battlefield players ever, but the point is when you're playing in a server where it's mainly just random people that have just come on to play together, if you happen to have a squad, that gives you a gigantic advantage in terms of just how effective you can be. And again, the guys were rocking the landship and they just destroyed everything that came near them. There was no touching them. I'll tell you something else which I feel like is going to be an issue, maybe a bit of an unforeseen one, but so basically now we have drivers with the tanks, right? Which means you can't just say like take a sniper and then jump in a tank or whatever, right? What we had was when we were playing Rush, one of the guys defending, we really needed to get the tank moved because there were different threats around. But there was one guy who basically had taken the heavy tank and had decided he was going to put it somewhere where it would benefit how he wanted to fire it. And basically what he did was he drove it to a position where he would park it up so that he could use those twin machine guns on the back. And he basically just refused to move it. He just sat there on the machine guns and he just basically backed it into this place. And we were like, we need the tank, we need it, because we were getting screwed elsewhere. And he's just like sitting there going, just like cutting people down. And it's like, is that going to be a thing we see a lot? I don't know. It's like, I haven't actually seen it all that much. I only saw it one time. Mm-hmm. But the fact that I saw it one time, suddenly like a little light bulb came on and I was like, oh God, that's going to be something which happens. And it just sort of, people are not known necessarily for being the most cooperative always, and sort of all the most considerate of what other people need. And the fact we saw it, and the fact that the guy was so stubborn in terms of basically just blanking everyone, it was a bit like, oh God, is this going to be something that happens? I'll say I only seen it one time in the whole time I've been playing, but the fact I saw it at all bothered me because I suddenly realised it wasn't something that I thought that could happen before. It didn't occur to me in my head, but now I've seen it, I'm like, oh yeah, crap, they can just put it wherever they like and nobody can do anything about it. So that was a bother.
Yeah, I mean, overall though, I mean, I
Yeah,
think
overall,
that
yeah.
we've got the foresight to know that a lot of the issues with what we were talking about with the tank balance and having to get close to take them out, we know that in other maps in the game that isn't going to be the case, and
Yes.
there will be another way that you need to attack it. We have the foresight to know that this scenario is it may be only relevant to this map. So, in many aspects, it'll be interesting to see if DICE do make any changes based on their feedback. But I'm not expecting a huge amount to change if I'm that honest. To be fair,
No, I expect so. I don't think the speed of the tanks will change. I'm gonna sort of seriously send a link from this and say to like David Stern or other people, please, that repping. That
yes.
has to change. But the other stuff, like you can probably deal with it. You can take it with a pinch of salt. You can whatever. Okay, you can handle it one way or the other. But the other stuff, that needs to be a thing. Like it really, really does. It will be hugely detrimental if they leave it as it is. It just will. Cavalry. Let's just talk about that. As I say, I think I'll just, as a brief touch on point, aircraft, I generally feel like they're okay. Like yourself, I'm not a big air guy because I like to be on the ground and capping flags because that's what I do. So the aircraft, but I have to say, I tell you what I do love. I just love the atmosphere. You know, you're running along the ground shooting at stuff, and then like it comes across, and you're like, oh man, that's epic. You know, and the way
really cool.
The fact they can land and people can just hop in, that's great as well. If people haven't tried doing that, because they're slower and they got the wheels, you can nicely just touch down. So we were down at E, and me and a couple of the guys had vehicles. There was one other guy in my squad. There was one person flying around in the sky. He was like, dude, come pick me up at E. So he came down, landed the plane. My guy jumps in on the back, and then they take off again. So that's a great new thing that can happen. Again, probably slightly dependent on which map you're playing on, but nonetheless, it's a thing that you can do now. So that's really cool. But just as a kind of environmental thing, it's beautiful to see those old planes and not just have jets A-10ing all over the place and stuff. But you know, the light vehicles, I don't really have any issue with the light vehicles. I feel like they're all generally pretty fine. I like them. Good, you know, good speed, good movement, good gunplay. You can carry people around. What's not to like? It's all fine. But yeah, let's just talk about cavalry. I love the cavalry. I was super concerned about how they would move and feel, and horses. Whenever you try and put an animal into a game like this, it's a tricky thing because, you know, it's very... Trying to make an animal feel and look real is tricky. Again, some situations I've had are a bit like, but you know, it's a game. Like you just have to kind of, oh my god, did I say it's a game? Fuck. I never say things are just a game. Oh god, but no. It's all right. Most of the time, I like it. The horses, they run good, they feel good, they lean, they move. Like it feels very, very, you know, as it should be. I love the sword attacking. That's fantastic. I like the fact that you can shoot off as well. It's all great. But again, I think some people have had issues with balance there. I haven't felt it myself, but some people do. What do you feel about cavalry?
I know there's a bug with it. I know that the cavalry class in certain situations, depending on where you spawn and which one you take and whether you get on it in the middle of the battle or whether you spawn on one, that in some cases the armor that should be on you isn't on you, and it is on you when you get off the horse, so you have like 5 times the health you should have. So that's an issue that will get fixed, and I've had that confirmed already. But in general, I really like it. I think it's a great addition to the scene. If we had World War One without horses, I would be like, oh, where are the horses? It would have been really cool. And the fact that they put them in, first of all, you know, they actually conceptualized the idea and thought this is something we have to do, and then for them to get it so right is actually a really big achievement.
I agree.
The way that they play the cavalry officer once you get off the horse, which I think is just as interesting as you playing with the horse, I don't feel like it's overpowered. You've only got a repeater rifle with iron sights. You've only got a certain amount of grenades that you can use. One thing I do think is slightly annoying with the cavalry is that you have ammo pouches and health, and they have separate cooldowns on them. Because you've got ammo and health, that makes you extremely powerful. If you throw an ammo pack down and then you throw a health pack down, you can just go back to normal if you've taken a few bullets, and then you rearm and go back around the corner and start your fight again. It's almost like a little bit of a hack. So I would like to see both the ammo pack and the health pack on the cavalry officer have a combined cooldown, so that if you throw an ammo pack down, you can't instantly throw a med pack down. Because then that way, you know, it makes it a bit more balanced. They have to wait a little while to, you know, get the ammo back or to heal up again. I think that's probably the only change I would make to the cavalry class. Other than that, I think it's perfectly balanced, and it's the sacrifice you make if you jump off your horse. Well, you've only got a repeater rifle, so, you know, screw you.
One thing that did bug me a little, and I wonder what you think about this, was the speed in changing from the sword to the gun. and to a point, I can be fine with it, because if you've got a sword out, if you literally think about it, again, look, we're not trying to say like it needs to be real life, but at the same time, there's always a balance there between sort of understanding how something like physically works and how you want it to be in a game. There's like a compromise, there's a fine line there. So for me, I found myself in a couple of situations. I do like playing the cavalry guy because it's really exhilarating riding through the village and then you're just chopping people down. Like it feels good when you get them and you're like, but there have been a couple of situations where I have ridden in and I've missed a guy with the sword because he either just quickly dodged to the other side of my horse, and I think this is actually something somebody else said was, do you think we'll be able to get it so we can cut both sides, not just the one side? Again, I don't know actually how that worked in real life. I've not bothered to sort of look up whether they did actually sweep left and right, but I feel like I have seen that at some point in, where they did like kind of sweeping cuts to the left and the right, not just the right hand side. So I don't know, but the point was that I had missed the guy because he jumped sort of to the left of me, and I kind of was like, So what I wanted to do was to quickly sheath my sword, grab the gun, and pick him off from the left-hand side. Yeah. It doesn't work like that. It's not smooth enough because it takes too long. Like by the time you've decided to change your sword, you're like, and get the gun, and then he's like shot you straight off the horse, or the other two guys who happen to be around you have as well. So it's kind of like if you're in a situation where you miss, you can't turn and try and like shoot him. You can try and turn and sword him again, but it slightly depends on the environment you're in. Like, and again, for me where I was, it wasn't practical. That's why I needed to change to the gun, because I couldn't get it around to get to where I needed to quick enough. So you almost have to kind of like, if you miss, you have to cancel it and go, okay, I'm going to just ride away and come back around for another go. So again, it's like I understand, like I say, that I would say the physical needs to obviously. If you've got a sword out, you're not going to just drop it. You'd probably have to get it away somehow to get the gun out, and there is obviously going to be a time in terms of a changeover there. But just from a fluidness of gameplay, in terms of like literally looking at how it mechanically works and how we enjoy the feel of that movement, I feel like it could be a little quicker there. Have you had any situations like that at all, or has it just been fine, or you think speeding it up would be unfair or anything?
Do you know what? I think the overall feeling at the moment is very good. But the jarring aspect is if you do miss, I do feel like it's a huge penalty if you miss your target, whether you trample them or whether you hit them with the sword, whatever you're trying to do. If you miss them, they notice you instantly. They turn around, start shooting you. You have to loop all the way back round and try again. But they already know that you're there. Part of being on the horse is it's a surprise attack a lot of the time. You don't realize it's going to happen. That's the point of having the saber slash. You don't expect it, so that when it happens, it's kind of like, the guy got one up on me. I was out in the open. Maybe I deserve to be taken out by a horse. But like, I feel that as soon as you miss, it's a huge penalty. So being able to switch back to your rifle a little bit quicker, I think, would be of benefit to the cavalry officer. Although, again, the scenario is like, you miss one, how many others are there in front of you that you could have gone for as well? Do you just go and trample someone else? I mean,
it might be very much a kind of class play style where you have to just simply understand, like, look, basically when you get this, it's a one-hit kill, and you are riding in fast and getting a one-hit kill. So it's kind of like, look, I can understand that is powerful and that's why it's good, but like you say, you miss and you're like, maybe the way it is that you just have to understand the time delay between changing your weapon is more significant than it would be if you were just normally on the ground, and that's just the way of balancing that class. And so if you are approaching enemies and you miss, you almost need to pre-line yourself so you've got a safe escape out. Don't put yourself into like a small compound where you're going to have to physically U-turn the horse around and get back out, because you'll lose all that speed and momentum. You need to be able to ride through. If you miss, well, you need to kind of keep moving and get out of there and get out of their line of sight and maybe come around for another go. Because when you're moving real fast on that horse, it can be tricky. I've had people shoot me off when I'm going full speed, but it's
rare.
That's the safety of that. That's the safety of that class, is the speed it moves, and trying to hit a moving target is tricky for some people. So it's a 50-50 balance. That's the only thing I would do though. Maybe just tweak it a little bit, but.
Overall, though, I've got to say,
I love
the implementation, they've done a really good job because, and they actually motion cap that horse.
Yeah,
it's the same. And apparently, according to the two angry gamers, it's the same horse that was in the film War Horse.
That's really?
That's the horse they use, which is really
so
cool. But
yeah.
Overall, it was going to be a hard thing for them to do, and they've pulled it off. So they deserve all the credit they get for that.
So let's just finish up there. Let's just say, do you still feel very confident and happy with where Battlefield 1 is right now? Do you feel, I guess I say what I would say is, do you feel it's where you felt it would be at this stage? Because obviously you've been following a lot more than I have, because I've sort of, in many ways, you know what though? I like the fact I've taken a little holiday from Battlefield. Sometimes you do need to take like a screen break and you come back and it feels different, it feels good. I'm not going to say that there's not some things there that I'm concerned about, but I'm trying to give this game a fair crack. Some people have been, you're too negative. I'm not negative. I'm just always very critical of games. And, I'm critical about this game, as I have been with every Battlefield title that I've played. But yeah, I like the look of it. But where do you feel we're at with this?
I feel like the reveal that back in May, everybody got really excited, and that's great when a new game comes around. I think it's the actual setting, the change of the way, the big changes that they've made are good for what they're trying to achieve with Battlefield 1. In terms of the beta, what we're actually playing right now, I would have liked to have seen a later build, because I feel like a lot of the fixes and a lot of the changes that were from the alpha haven't quite made it in. Just some of the animations are missing. Some of the like mechanics aren't quite what the feedback suggested from the alpha was going to be. And I would like to have seen a closer build to the one that we're actually going to get on our disc when we buy the game, or on your digital download or whatever. Although having said that, there's nothing in this game right now that tells me that it's ridiculously broken or it's not going to perform as you expect it to. I'm very optimistic of the fact that the game's going to come out and it's going to be fine. I don't think we're going to be in another Battlefield 4 scenario. So in that aspect, I'm confident and I'm happy with the way that it is right now. I would have liked to have seen a later build so that I could have got a better idea as to what I'm getting when this game comes out. But, as we said at the start, beta means different things to different people.
Yeah, I would agree. I tell you what, where I am with this. I think your points are fair as well, by the way. I think that it would have been better and more beneficial for them to either be clear about the beta or, like you say, run a later build of it. But they've made their choices, and I don't think it's excessively negative. I feel like you can rationalize it and understand it, but I feel like it would have just been more helpful. Yes. But where I am with this, everybody knows that I have been on the fence with this game, is probably the best way to put it. This game is a big deal for me. This game is a deal breaker. If this game, I've said this before, if this game doesn't play out well, if I don't feel like it's really gone the way I personally wanted to see it go, I'm probably going to say I'm going to step away from the franchise at this point, which would be a sad thing, because I've been playing Battlefield pretty much since the first game came out a long time ago. Man, is it like 10 years? It's like a really long time anyway.
Ridiculous amount of time.
Really long time. And actually, that was what was so nice when I was speaking to Lars at the reveal, just sort of saying to him, it was nice to hear his answer when I was sort of saying, like, what does the game mean to you? Knowing that he's been basically working on this for like most of his sort of professional career, just working on this one franchise. And it's a big deal. But the point that I'm making is that this game means a lot to a lot of people. It's not like, I don't think it's a small deal. I was joking earlier about me saying, like, it's a game. I always have this thing about when people say, oh, it's just a game. It's not just a game. Like, nothing is just a game. Not when you're serious about playing games, because the time you invest into something has to give you a return on that. So when you invest a lot of yourself in something, you really feel like that has to kind of come back to you. And so that's why you care about it. That's why you're passionate about it, because you've contributed a lot of yourself to something. And so Battlefield for me is a series in gaming that I have contributed a lot of myself to. World of Warcraft is the only game I contributed more to, and I played that game solidly for like 4.5 years. So it's like Battlefield is the second game. It's the game which I've spent the second longest amount of time on. Although I said I've been playing Battlefield for maybe 10 years even. So, but it's when I played WoW, it was very intense. So this has been more spread out. But the point that I'm trying to say is that I've been playing Battlefield for a very, very long time, and things have kind of come to a head for me because, as we have discussed, the game has reached a much broader audience. When they started to really bring new people in Battlefield 3, people were saying, oh my god, there's all these new people. I was like, that's not a problem. I was like, it's not a problem. If people come in on Battlefield, because at the very beginning of Battlefield 3, and I was saying to people, like, that's not an issue, because when people come into the game, they'll either like the slower gameplay pace and the tactical way that people play Battlefield, or they won't like it and they'll go back and play Call of Duty.
Yep.
How wrong was I? It's like, that is not what happened. What happened is that EA and DICE saw that they had a big opportunity to increase their player base, increase the market for the game, and push the product further than it ever had been before. And, nobody can... That's not a bad thing from one point of view. For other people, it is. That's just what happens. It's going to happen. You can't be too upset about that. But it doesn't change the fact that the community has broadened beyond what you might have imagined. And so now we're in a different position than we were with the start of Battlefield 3. The player base is different. The way in which the game is led to cater to that audience is different, and so for some of us that have been playing a long time, the game feels different. Do we know exactly how it's going to play when it comes out? No. Do we know, is it going to be kind of what we want? No. Basically what I would like to see is everything that was built on from Battlefield 4, don't worry so much about Hardline, and everything that was built on from Battlefield 4, and then just like we've said all along, just lean towards Teamplay and objective. I think this is a thing that I just want to clear up, because so many times people say, like, Luetin, you're all just about objective, and people want to have fun too, people want to screw around, like, they paid their money, blah blah blah. Look, okay, I get it, all right. I have said for the longest time, I am not about forcing people to play the objective or Teamplay, but what I want to see from DICE and EA is them lean back towards objective, to say, like, look, this is what you need to do, this is where it needs to be going. At least try to encourage people, and then I'll feel okay. It's like, yeah, at least they're trying. I feel like they are doing that. I feel like they are leaning towards it. Could they do a little bit more? From my point of view, yeah, but I feel like it's going in the right direction. So we will see. We will see what happens when the game comes out. I plan to pretty much get a private server, get a load of people on there, and have some really hardcore, good objective games. That's my plan. That's how I'm going to enjoy the game. You're welcome to come and join with me. But, there's different ways to play Battlefield, okay? There always has, and there probably always will be. There's no one way to play. And I get it. People like to do other things. And so do I. Everybody likes to kick back sometimes and just drive around screwing things up and don't worry too much about what's happening in the rest of the map, That's fun. It's good. That's what we do in all games, So, yeah. But I am happy with where the game is. I feel like it could have been really bad, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like
it could have been.
They took on a controversial thing here, and that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say like they could have screwed the game real bad. What I'm trying to say is, by going in this direction, it could have been a disaster. I think it hasn't. I think they've pulled it together. But on the other hand, I still, like I say, have a lot of concerns. We will just have to wait and see how things play out, see how the game comes out at release, and keep our fingers crossed that they make some of those changes that me and Westie have suggested that, we really feel like needs to happen. I honestly feel like some of the things that we were talking about, like the tanks and so on, and some of the scoring and things like this, those are things which I really feel fundamentally will affect how the game play. Then those are not like little personal tweaks that we think are just like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if they could do this? No. These are serious things that I really feel, if they don't make those changes, will badly affect the game. Would you say that's fair to say, Westie?
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe not badly affect it, but it will change the way the game is played.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
I mean, it could negatively affect it, and I think that the opinion of a lot of people is very similar to the opinions that we have. And if they don't change it, then they might annoy some people. But at its core level, like, if they don't change some of those things, then it will change the way the game is played.
You're so much better at being positive than me, dude. Like, just
I always try and find the positives, and that's something that people hate about me because they think I'm too positive.
I suppose, can you be too positive at the end of the day? I don't know. I sometimes wish I was more positive,
According to the internet, you could be too positive.
Yeah, it's true. All right, guys. Anyway, so thank you for listening today, guys. Hope you've enjoyed this marathon discussion about Battlefield 1. Please drop your thoughts down below. If you have a specific thought about a specific point in the video, please drop the timestamp with it as well, so other people can have a look at what you're talking about. And yeah, just drop your thoughts about Battlefield 1. I feel like it's going in a good direction, but we will wait and see. Westie, thanks for talking to me today.
No problem at all. It was good to chat.
And guys, yeah, we'll see you next time for some more Battlefield 1.